welcome to Birdseeds. Today's an exciting episode. I have a longtime friend coming as a guest on this episode. And I mean, somebody I've known since he was 21. In fact, he was in my phone as Dan 21 for quite a long time. And now he's in my phone as probably a horribly misspelled version of his last name. And the reason we're having Dan on this episode, besides the fact that he's just a great guy and fun to talk to, is he was recently on Jeopardy. And I want to talk to him about how he was able to accomplish that goal, because that's something I literally know nobody else that's been able to do that. So welcome, Dan Ciarrocchi.
I'm just honored that I got my last name in your phone book at all.
Exactly. I have no idea what it's in there as.
That's a goal in and of that's a goal in and of itself, I think, for me.
Yeah, I mean, you were Dan 21 for at least 5 years, and probably more.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that definitely matches my maturity level at the very least. So.
Yeah, I know it's wrong. I have you as CHIROCCHI.
Not even close.
No.
But that's all right. That's why people are listening to this instead of reading it.
Right, because it's phonetic. At least that was phonetic. Ciarrocchi.
Close enough. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, Dan, tell us a little bit more. I mean, obviously, we're going to talk about your Jeopardy episodes with a plural because you won one, which is awesome in and of itself. But tell us a little bit more about yourself. I mean, I've known you through so many iterations of yourself, but help us understand who you are.
Oh, man. Okay, so you and I actually met back when we were doing our music thing back in the day. Since then, I kind of got into writing I let writing take over as a passion of mine. And I have a background in journalism, but I don't really want to be a journalist. I love to write. I don't love to report. And I don't necessarily love being my own secretary either, but I'm sure we're going to get into a lot of that in a bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, I have written a manuscript for a novel. I am also working on, I actually wrote, produced, am directing, and am voice acting in a scripted podcast that's historical fiction and satire about the 1893 World Fair. It's called No Holmes Barred. So that's pretty much, I think that's up to date at this point.
That's awesome. And your podcast is incredible, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, really impressed with the production quality and all that you kind of put into it. So, and that's No Holmes Barred. That's HOLMES for anybody out there. And I'll put a link in there. It's on Apple or Spotify or wherever you're listening to this now. It's all on the same channel. So, I mean, to me, that podcast just so exemplifies you. It's historical. It has its roots in real events. It's weird, and the real events are weird. They're odd. That kind of fits your personality there a little bit, and plenty of satire. Which anybody else listening that knows Dan knows that there's no Dan without satire.
That's true.
Exactly.
I find it hard to take myself seriously. So yeah, I can't not incorporate that as a little bit of an element, but yeah,
exactly.
For sure.
But more importantly, it's so well done and so thought out and so organized. And the one thing I know about you, Dan, is anytime you put your heart into something, you figure out all the avenues and the angles before you get too far into the project. You're not going to release it to anybody until it's the final product that you want. I think that's the true artist in you, is that you have the vision and you know what the end result's going to be, and you're not okay until it's there. You're not satisfied. You're not proud. You can be proud of the benchmarks, but you're not proud of the product until it's finished.
For sure. And, the thing with that is, I don't always know exactly how it's going to turn out. And it's because it's easy to get bogged down by trying to conform to this preconception of whatever project that you have going on. So I try to, give myself some grace, give myself some flexibility there. The other thing to keep in mind, more to that point is, I'm still working with a lot of people, a lot of different actors for this project. And I would honestly be kind of an idiot if I didn't incorporate their ideas as well, just their interpretations of the characters, their interpretations of the events, and just different ways to, there's so many different ways that they can play into that. So, I can only think of so much ahead of time. So while this is still my project and stuff, the collaboration is where things can go from good to great. And hopefully that trajectory continues and they don't get too tired of me.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the true role of a producer. And it's something that I've realized as I've gotten older and a little bit out of the music world, especially where, myself and I think you included, where we got in our music careers, the term producer was really the engineer.
Right.
It was a glorified engineer. They did more than just engineer and record it. And then they had their ideas and all that kind of stuff. But that's really what it is. But a true producer on like a big budget recording isn't really there to touch the equipment and the sounds and the tones. They're there to direct and encourage the best performance from the artist and to capture the moments. And as goofy and wonky as Rick Rubin is, I've been listening to a lot of his stuff, starting his book, and he's goofy and wonky, but he gets that. He gets that concept of like, my job isn't to touch the board. I don't even know how to run whatever software we're using. It's just stand there barefoot with a beard and meditate and get people to make the best performance and find those moments and capture them.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to note that I don't really I think it's important to note too that a lot of producers, I think the really good ones are the ones that aren't trying to kind of square peg round hole with the people that they're working with. Just they're trying to get what they need out of them based on their capacity, what their sound is, what their comfort zone is. It's not to say that, you don't want to stretch your stretch the actors or whoever you're working with, or challenge them rather, but there's a point to everything. There's a limit to everything. So I think that's a big part of it too.
Yeah. Well, if you weren't relying on those individual players or actors' talents, you would just do it yourself.
Right. What are you doing there otherwise?
Right. You have to have the voice, and it's the combination of ideas and concepts and talents and opinions and all that kind of stuff that makes something a magical moment, for sure.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
But no, seriously, the podcast is awesome. I'm excited for more episodes. I'm going to plug it again to you that if you need any more vocal talent, I can try my best.
Awesome. Yeah, I will be hitting you up about that.
Awesome. So let's get into the meat here. So you mentioned to Laura and I, 2 years ago, maybe. And with COVID, I've lost track of time. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it was probably before COVID, shortly before COVID, that you had this like goal that you wanted to get on Jeopardy, and you said it in like, don't tell anybody because I don't really want to put the pressure on and let a bunch of people know what you told us. And you've done it, man. It's aired, 2 episodes out. So how did you go from that mentioning of like, I think I want to do this, don't tell anybody, to actually getting it done? Like, that's impressive.
I appreciate that. And thank you. Yeah, I think where it started from is I wanted to keep it to myself at first because I wasn't yet sure if I was going to follow through on it, to be completely honest.
Sure.
So, I had a lot of, there's also just so many phases of the casting process for Jeopardy. So I didn't want to put the cart before the horse there because I knew that the process there were so many things out of my control. The things that were in my control were incredibly challenging. And so I knew it was going to also take a lot of preparation as well. So the reason I say that is it's not just the question or the clues are hard, the test is hard. No, if you fail that test, you don't get to take it for another year.
Wow.
So I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to need to study. I'm going to need to prepare. I'm going to need to do a little bit more than just sit on my couch and yell responses out at the show. Don't get me wrong. I did do quite a bit of that, so I remember just studying as much as I could. But at the same time, that presented its own pitfall because I'm like, oh, I don't want to wait a year to have to take it. And then, I just kind of look up from my books. I'm like, dude, it's been 4 months. Like, what are you doing? Just push the birdie out of the nest, so to say, keeping the metaphors in line with this podcast.
Yeah.
But
the seed fell on the ground. So you got to go get it. Right.
Exactly. So, I said, screw it. I'll do it. I had no idea. Like when I asked myself, like, what topics are you fuzzy on? Is it going to really make that much of a difference for the test? maybe, who knows, but it's always going to be something that you get wrong that disqualifies you, because all of the runs come to an end at some point, whether that's, you know, Ken Jennings 70 games from now, or just failing the test the first time around.
Right.
So yeah, so I bit the bullet. I took the test. There's 50
Is that
questions.
an online test then, right?
Yes, it is
Okay.
an online test, the Jeopardy Anytime test. There's 50 questions. I have no idea what a passing grade is. They just, and you only know if you pass it if they contact you. And in about 3 months after I took the test, they had me take it again, but proctored this time. And when I say proctored, I mean it was through Zoom.
Interesting.
So yeah, like you were just in this Zoom room with a proctor with like 8 other people kind of taking a test, and it was bizarre, but it was but I passed it again. They contacted me, I think it was another 3 or 4 months later, to say that I was gonna, the next step was an interview process, which was sort of like they had about 9 of us in Zoom again with a couple of the producers, and we played mock games together just to, you know, they claimed that the intelligence assessment and at that point was already done, that this was more about how do you speak, how do you navigate the game, the board. You'd be amazed at how many people don't phrase things in the form of a question,
right.
or get a correct response and then freeze instead of picking another clue and category. So that was that whole process. And then once that was all said and done, I got the call and let's see, I believe I took the first test in March of 2022, and I filmed in February of 2023. So it took a year.
Yeah, just under a year. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then prior to that, it was about 4 months before you took that first test.
I think between the first and second test, it was like 3 or 4 months. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. From the initial, I want to do this till I took the first test. Like from the time you committed that, you said this, you know, something to us or whoever else, and then you took that first test. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely more than a year-long process.
Yeah, it's almost a year and a half, not quite a year and a half from like, I want to do this till, wow, I filmed this. And then, gosh, it was sometime in April that the episode aired, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, so it's about a year and a half from when it was publicly in the world. That's cool. That's awesome.
It's been a ride.
Yeah. Well, I think you nailed something there about Jeopardy, that it's, you know, obviously there's an intelligence factor to it. It's a game show about how smart are you? How many facts can you recall? But it's entertainment at the end of the day. I mean, it's aired on TV. They're not making money if people aren't watching. So at the end of the day, it is an entertainment show. And so you never really think about that part of it, of like, yeah, you got to be smart. Maybe even more important, you got to get viewers in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right? I think you gotta have fun with it too. Just while you're there, that's a way easier said than done. But yeah, I thought I was able to do a good job of balancing the whole preparation with making sure I'm just loose and having fun and appreciating the moment too. Because when's it going to happen again? You never know.
Right. That's awesome.
Probably never.
Well, you never know. You never know. Never say never, right?
True. Exactly.
So is it as true as they say, I don't know who they is, that you hear that like pushing the button and getting you to be able to answer the question is like almost the hardest part?
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that assessment. It's not something you can really practice for, because you have to get a certain rhythm down, and it depends on a lot of factors. It depends on the cadence of the host, and there's a timing thing. You get a signal when it's time to buzz in, but if you do it too soon, they can lock you out of that. So it's about speed and rhythm, and you get a rehearsal, and so it's just like a really it's a really difficult thing to navigate. And coming out of it, all the contestants seem a little shell-shocked by just how competitive it is up there, because when you're against those other contestants, you can't just assume they're going to get the questions wrong. Like, they've made it that far, so you have to really, really get a handle on that buzzer. But not just that, but being conscious of when not to ring in, because a strategy that a lot of people do is they ring in before being positive of what the correct response is and just relying on their memory recall to get you there in something like the 3 seconds you have to answer a question. So it's a real daunting, that buzzer is a real daunting piece of machinery for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine the question's going, and you know it's a topic. Not only is the category something you're confident in, but then a question starts on a very specific topic you're very confident in. Even before they're done reading the question, or you've read ahead, like you're hitting that buzzer because you know that you probably know the answer, but you've hit it before you know that you know the answer.
Right.
And then you're like, oh gosh.
Right, exactly. And you can just run into some issues with, like, I ran into one clue where I just read it wrong. I misinterpreted what they were asking, and I see people do this. I see contestants do this all the time, and they'll just answer something way off base. I mean, I did the same thing. So, I mean, it's just a number of different things that can kind of knock you off your game. So while you can't really project specifically, things like the timing of the buzzer or the spring tension of the buzzer and believe me, I tried. I really did try to see if I could replicate any of this, but.
So you don't, the first time you get up on stage for the filming is the first time you actually get the buzzer?
No, they did a little bit of rehearsal beforehand, but not much.
Okay.
So yeah, like while I couldn't recreate the exact conditions of the Alex Trebek stage, what I knew I needed to do was to just try to practice how you play as much as you can. So
Sure.
I just tried to introduce a lot of stress elements to my routine. I'm not sitting on the couch when I'm playing. I'm standing. I don't have a real buzzer, but I did have a toilet paper roll that I used, or the thing that holds toilet paper rolls, rather. And that was like my fake buzzer. And I would phrase things in the form of a question out loud. Just I wanted it to become I want those things to be second nature as much as possible, so that when crunch time does happen, there's less that I have to be conscious of.
No, that makes perfect sense. Do you think like playing video games? I know you were really big into Guitar Hero back in the day and had done some like competitions on that. Do you think that attributed to your ability to be good on, pressing the button and getting buzzed in?
I mean, I thought it would. I was kind of banking on that actually, but
Yeah.
but man, I really I did not do great on the whole buzzer speed thing. So I think I really benefited from just picking my spots of when to ring in, and there were a lot of instances where someone would ring in before me and get it wrong, and I'd kind of pick up the scraps.
Yeah.
So that wound up, but that's a significant swing if that does happen in my favor. So yeah, I thought that I would be great because of the video games that I was playing. Like,
Yeah.
I was really good at Guitar Hero 2 for PS2 back in the day, but I haven't really played any of them since. And I thought my Mario Party skills were going to help me too, but
for sure.
Nah, the people I competed against, they are just absolute demons on the buzzer, and the level of competition, I really can't say enough about. Just the contestants there were they were just sharper than tacks.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So mindfulness is something I'm like really trying to work on in my life and bring a part of my daily routine, meditation, breathing, breath exercises, things like that. I can only imagine, like, you buzz in, it's your turn. You got 3 seconds or whatever. There's so much noise in your head in that moment. How do you even like get the focus to find the words that you're trying to come up with and like get them out of your mouth? Like, to me, did you use any mindfulness methods, breathing practices to kind of stay present?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was more in my preparation that really helped, just to make sure that it came second nature as much as it could.
Yeah.
Just trying to introduce the elements of stress beforehand, because yes, there's different ways of being stressed out when you're on stage, or like the lights might be too hot, or maybe you can't see very well on the stage, or something like that. But just having the second nature to kind of jog your memory recall and find those answers pretty quick. I mean, to be honest, just that's something like you said, I've been doing this for like a year and a half long process. And from the first test, you only have something like 8 seconds to type in a response. So yeah, it's something that I've been practicing for a long time, and it's something you can get good at. Like if you say, "Oh, I've got a bad memory, I couldn't study for Jeopardy." No, I think you really can. I think it is a game that you can absolutely study for, contrary to what I think a lot of people have said, anecdotally, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, on that note, like I'm so impressed with your, and I've always been frankly impressed with your ability to like know random facts and like recall something that you read 20 years ago, you know, and just, I mean, sports specifically, but just in general.
Yeah.
And, you know, I love how different everybody's brains are. Like, that is not my brain. I'm not saying like if I didn't focus on that, I couldn't get to not to your level, but to some level of that for sure.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
like, that's just not the way my brain works. My brain is concept to concept to concept to concept, not detail to detail to detail to detail.
yeah, and I wish I had any of that. Because I'm convinced that everything in my head is just thoroughly useless information. Just I mean, just literally trivia. So yeah, I mean, I would love to have some practical knowledge at some point, and that's something I got to work on too. But you're right, there are so many different types of intelligence, and just because you couldn't recall, like, I don't know, the 13th president of the United States, Millard Fillmore, by the way.
Thank you.
Just if you can't do that, it doesn't mean you also couldn't like put together some impossible piece of furniture from IKEA or whatever, which
Right.
I refuse to do to this day. So it's just all
I
kinds
can't
of
read
ways.
instructions. I have such a attention deficit issue that I can literally not read instructions and perform the task.
Mm,
It's
yeah,
just because I read it and I go to do the task. I'm like, wait, what was I supposed to do? And I go and read it, and then I come back. I'm like, I still don't know what I was supposed to do. So,
right.
Laura has forbid me from building furniture because I'd break it.
Yeah, and it's hard to keep your mind from wandering too when you're
Yeah,
reading something else, because it'll prompt other thoughts in your head sometimes, just and you can go on those tangents. Meanwhile, your piece of furniture is just in tatters on the ground while they're trying to be like just get you to insert rod A into slot A or something like that.
exactly, exactly. But give me some freedom of creativity and give me a problem, and I'll come up with a bunch of solutions for it that didn't exist. And that's where my sort of, I don't want to say intelligence, but that's where like my brain ability lies. Connecting
Right,
dots,
right.
connecting dots, solving problems
Yeah.
for sure. That's awesome, man. I'm super impressed. It's cool to hear like everything you did to get to it. It's not just you winged it and showed up, and like you had intentionality, you set goals, you knew what tasks had to be done.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I
that's
think
awesome, man.
Yeah, and I think the important part too was just allow yourself some flexibility, some grace. Like, was I like if I went up against James Holtauer or drew a match with like Amy Schneider or Matt Amodio, there's no doubt in my mind that they would have wiped the floor with me. Just especially just with me only preparing for this for like a year or so. Not to say that I mean, they are just phenomenal competitors, but I also know that like there's only so much that I'm gonna retain. So I just need to do my best in trying to find ways of doing it. Just trying to like trick myself to tailor all of this material towards interests that I have. That's why I think history was an easy thing for me to delve into, because it
Sure.
could because there's so many implications to that, to just about anything that you take out of the textbooks, um, and because of that, that's just easier for me to retain than maybe like a random fact of like, oh, I don't know, just something on the periodic table, for example, just randomly, what's this element number, I don't know. That's really hard to, everybody has their own mnemonic devices and stuff to remember it and everything, but and while I did too, there's only so much that you're going to be able to do no matter what. I said that the run is going to come to an end at some point. I'm going to get a question that I'm going to be like, oh, I should have known that, but there would not have been like an example by that logic
Right.
where I would ever be satisfied.
Right. That makes perfect sense. And I mean, you nailed the first one for sure, and you really came so close to coming back on that second one to win. It's again awesome, man.
Oh yeah, all the credit in the world to Deb and Jeremy in that second game. They were really, 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 really good.
Yeah.
It was a real competitive game. It was pretty high scoring when it was all said and done.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and then also, man, like the party. So Dan threw a party at Peabody Heights Brewery in Baltimore, near where he lives, and a bunch of people came out to watch the episode and hang out. I mean, you had some media people there. You had a great turnout. I mean, the brewery wasn't even open that night, so it's not even like it was just people that were there. Okay.
Yeah, it was a new thing that they're doing. Like they're not usually open Monday nights, but they are now.
Okay, gotcha. But either way, everybody that was there specifically to see and support you, and that just had to feel awesome to like just know that all those people were there specifically because of you.
It was unbelievable. I did not expect the turnout that I got. I don't really know how many people off the top of my head. Definitely a few dozen for sure. It's not like
I was going to say 30 to 40 is what I would guess. Just ballparking. Yep.
I don't even know. Like it was, but just getting that on just a Monday night, at the neighborhood brewery, it was just, I mean, it blew my mind. That reception is something I'm never going to forget. And I promoted it. I wanted people to come out for sure. But at the same time, people have lives, and there's no shame in having a watch party that people can't attend. But
sure.
that was the goal, and I'm just glad that I'm really glad that my friends and family and people in the community were able to come out and support. It really meant everything.
Absolutely. How did you feel about when everybody started booing everybody else when they answered a question versus you?
Oh God, I was not expecting that. Especially because I had gotten to spend a lot of time backstage with the other competitors and the other contestants, and everybody there. Let me just say as strongly as in the strongest possible words, just how incredible they all were. Just so affable and friendly, and so happy to be there. And just so, I mean, like I said, just they were just absolute competitors and just so good at what they did. But and when I was backstage, when I got there, something that hadn't occurred to me is, okay, I'm in a room now with the only 11 people that can understand what I've been going through for like the past year or whatever. I could tell my friends and update them on the process to a point though. Because they don't want you talking about it too much, but yeah, just I could tell my friends that, and to my friends' credit, they'll try to understand it as much as possible, but they just don't know unless they've been going through it. So it was a really cool bonding experience for those purposes, and I know my friends weren't booing the other contestants for any particular reason other than they just wanted to support me, but at the same time, I was not expecting that. I can't say I condone it because I would not boo any of those people who I played against. But my friends are my friends, and they're amazing and weird and just ridiculous. So that probably goes more in the column of control what you can control.
Yeah, right. So to be clear, I don't think anybody was booing them individually. They were booing because they weren't you. They were supporting you. And second to that, sports is a big part of your life and a big part of the friendships that you have. And making Jeopardy into a sporting event, I think was just fitting for anybody's relationship with you. And I have to tell you, I may or may not have been the one that started the booing train. So
fair enough.
I'm sorry.
Fair enough. And and that reminds me, right before maybe a week and a half or so before my episode aired, I was at that same brewery for the Orioles opening day. Just that was like that was a huge event for the neighborhood as well.
Yeah.
And I was booing everything that wasn't my home team. So my friends were also there too. So if anything, they just learned by example, and I can't really be mad at them for that in that case.
Exactly. And we have some awesome stories from our younger years of going to some Orioles games and talking about socks from maybe Johnny Damon or
I don't even know.
Yeah.
It's a little fuzzy.
It comes with the early 20s.
Yes, it does.
Exactly.
Yes, it does.
Well, that's awesome, man. I am super proud of you. Number one, I'm so happy that we've stayed friends.
Yeah. Likewise.
For gosh, how many years? I don't even want to know how many years it's been. 2007, probably.
We're going by ages. Yeah. I mean,
yeah, you were 21.
Years.
Yeah, you were turning 21 because that's why you were in my phone is Dan 21. So
yeah, I'm 36 now.
Yeah, man, that's crazy. It doesn't feel like that long.
Nah, it's wild.
Well, the last thing I want to hit before I ask you a couple questions that I always ask the guest on the podcast, your hair may have been more successful than you on Jeopardy, and I've known your hair for a long time. But let's plug your hair stylist or whatever you call that person.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, yeah, I don't know what that person is.
Shout out to Lauren at Fringe in Baltimore. She's amazing. They all do amazing stuff. And another shout out to Mount Royal Soaps. Their shampoo shampoo and conditioner keeps everything pretty good for for when the cameras are on me and stuff. I was very proud that when I did go backstage, just from hair and makeup, they didn't really touch my hair at all. So awesome. I owe all of that to the people who got me there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I for one am jealous. Follically or whatever, however you want to say that word. You would know. Follically challenged over here.
Sure. I mean, at least you don't have to spend like 20 minutes each day blow drying it.
True statement. I spend every 4 or 5 days about 5 minutes shaving it off. So
yeah, I hate that. I hate that about you.
And I don't need shampoo. I just use soap.
Man.
That's awesome. Well, so these are going to be fun, especially with you here. So a couple questions. What is your favorite movie, TV show, video type thing of all time and current?
Of all time, I think I have to say The Simpsons.
Awesome.
Just the early episodes of The Simpsons. I think seasons 3 through 8 are probably my sweet spot. And, it's not that I won't look at the other episodes either. There's definitely some gems in the later years too. But I can also say that an embarrassing amount of knowledge that I was able to apply for Jeopardy came from The Simpsons, in general. Like they were just current events at the time are history now. So that was just and they were able to contextualize it with, their own acerbic wit and everything, and really paint a good picture of the way things were, or the impact of current events on society. So I got a pretty keen eye for that. I mean, as much of a keen eye as you can have from watching cartoons. But yeah.
It's crazy how much they predicted too. I mean, you see these memes all the time, and it's terrifying actually.
I know. And I wouldn't even, I bet if you ask them, like, they probably would be like, no, we didn't predict anything as much as we were just talking about what was going around us at the time. So it's just, it's a logical, albeit, exaggerated sequence of events that kind of happen in wake of that. So, man.
Yeah, no, obviously Simpsons is amazing. I know a show that we shared quite a bit that was awesome until the very end, Lost.
Oh, yeah.
And we watched that weekly together. Remember that Lost party with the Dharma beers was awesome.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I really do have a soft spot for that show. I know a lot of people did not like the way that it ended. I'm not gonna say like it was an ideal ending by any stretch of the means, but I still think that there was so much to appreciate just in terms of presentation and character development. I think if you I mean, it's kind of hard to say if you ignore the plot, the show's good. No, but like,
Right, exactly.
Yeah, but like, I still think there was enough there to make it a pretty enjoyable experience, even if it didn't pay off in the way that a lot of people were anticipating.
Well, you actually want to go back and watch it from the beginning
Oh yeah.
because the way it ended may have been totally fine from a story arc.
Mhm.
It's the fact that they told us that wasn't how it was going to end. And it was the
Right.
fact that it was the first show that I was ever vested in beyond watching an episode and like doing all the theories and listening to the creators and directors talk about it and lead us, away from what it wound up being, but flat out saying, no, it's not purgatory. And it turning out to be purgatory is kind of a problem. But I bet it actually works fine in the storyline.
I think it would have been much better as a bingeable show instead of this week to week process where everything is getting so drawn out. So it just, all it did was give people time to speculate, and then, once they could, all bets are off.
Yep. And then I know we shared Breaking Bad, or you actually hooked me on to Breaking Bad, and that probably the best ending to a show of all time.
Very satisfying. Very
As you
satisfying.
said, it actually ended the way you thought it would end. You wanted it to end.
Yeah. I mean, not to say that it was like completely predictable, but like more to say that they really tied up a lot of those loose ends, and I thought that the way that they left everything was really good, and I think Better Call Saul, I think I enjoyed that even more. It was
it's a great show.
Yeah, just a very it's a little more slower pace, a little more nuanced, but it was fantastic. Bob Odenkirk is brilliant.
Oh, he's awesome for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, do you watch The Last of Us?
I only saw episode 3 because I have a really weak stomach when it comes to like gore fests.
Yeah, it's so good. It's the best character development I've ever seen on a TV show.
Goodness,
it's awesome. It's worth watching.
I will have to check it out with like, I don't know, like I'll need some like crazy parent to like censor out all of the violence or like the really gratuitous violent parts, but what's the point at that point?
Exactly. Exactly. What about music? What's your favorite live show, song, album, band, whatever freeform music category?
Oh man, everything right now is that is such a hard question.
I know.
It's so difficult. Rubber Soul by the Beatles is just absolutely entrenched into my psyche at this point. I know it's not exactly going out on a limb saying that the Beatles were an influential band, but that is just something that I was exposed to, from the cradle to present. So I just really, it's also just kind of special to me that something that meant something to me at a really young age can still hold meaning today for reasons beyond nostalgia. Like I can still put on a record and hear something I never heard before. And so that's just a really big, so I really do have a big soft spot for that and Pet Sounds by the Beach Boys were really big.
Did you listen to that Rick Rubin Paul McCartney thing?
I did not know.
Oh dude, you got to watch that. I forget what platform it's on, but it's Rick Rubin and Paul McCartney, and it's the first time the Masters have ever left Abbey Road.
Oh wow.
And it's cinematographically like beautiful. It's like a dark backgrounds, uplight, black and white, and it's Rick Rubin geeking out over like just being able to mix in and out sounds, and Paul McCartney being like totally present and like the first time he's heard just his bass line on these songs in like however many years, and he's like, whoa, that was really cool. You have to watch it.
I mean just what a privilege it would be to just sit in a room with any one of the Beatles just while they, it's literally genius coming out of them. So I always have a weak spot. I always want to be around people who are just so passionate about the things that they're doing. It's magnetic to me. So just hearing people talk about any kind of passion project is a good way to get me interested and hooked for sure. I also wanted to, I guess, do a quick shout out to Death Cab for Cuties, the photo album. That was a huge influence on a lot of my a lot of my music stuff. Also, Tears for Fears is another big one that really got me into a lot of like the synthy kind of ambiance. And see, now that I'm thinking about it, I can like pull these out. Spiritualized, another band that just I could just put that record on. Or Ladies and Gentlemen, We're Floating in Space. I can just put that record on and just zone out for oh man, just for 75 minutes or however long that record is.
That's awesome.
But man, yeah, just all sorts of different music I kind of like, and I think that's probably why I failed so spectacularly as a musician, because I just couldn't make up my friggin' mind about just what it is, like what lane to stay in. Just it's that focus thing, that ever important focus thing for setting goals and seeing them through, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I agree. In music, it's hard. You play the style, but then like, I don't want to limit myself to just that style. I could write a song that sounds like this.
Right.
And I think it's
organic.
Organic. But if you can figure out, make it cohesive. So there's the organic aspect, and then there's a cohesion.
Right.
Unless you're just a songwriter, and that's awesome in and of itself, right? But if you're like trying to package it to sell it, there's got to be that cohesion.
Oh,
that's hard. I've always looked at myself. I mean, I'm a bass player, obviously, so I'm a glue that holds the band together, keeps the drummer in time, accentuates everything. But even from a songwriting perspective, I would come up with a lot of riffs. I'd come up with a lot of like chord progressions or rhythms or whatever, combining that, and then work with somebody else to create the melodies and all that. But even when somebody else brought a song, I would always almost just try to enhance it, try to put a different lens and perspective on it. To make what was there. And a lot of that would be making this other song that's not really the style we're doing, but hey, we can add this to it. Now we can make it at least fit and sound like it belongs in this spectrum. But I always like blending genres. I mean, growing up playing punk rock, early bands were just pop punk.
Right.
But then in Chicago, I had that R&B punky rock band, which was totally different. Nothing like anything else out there really still even. With Silver Dollar Switchblade, we were country mixed with punk, and although that's kind of a thing it's really out there, we were probably 4 or 5 years ahead of our time in that as a style that's now really popular with the Red Dirt kind of taking over. We weren't Red Dirt, but I think we kind of fit that that style. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you just don't know what something's going to be until you see it through.
Yeah, exactly. Are you playing anything now or writing anything music-wise?
Not at all. Just the guitars behind me may as well be props at the moment. I think I'm so focused on the podcast right now, but that's that's not to. I would not say that is a good example for anybody to follow. I think it's always good to just be able to take a break and just pick up a guitar if you're not, if you're working on something that's not music related, just pick up a guitar at some point. It'll jog different parts of your brain that you haven't used in a minute or two. And that can, in a lot of ways, can just help you in whatever it is you're doing otherwise. So yeah. I need to, that reminds me, I gotta pick up one of those guitars behind me and actually put it to use.
Yeah. I mean, getting back into music over the last year or so, year and a half, maybe, even as little as I'm doing it, but just doing it has sparks that creative part of my brain that kind of died off for a little bit.
Oh yeah.
And what that's doing in my business world and life in general and the mindfulness and all that kind of stuff. It's unbelievable. Of just scratching a little bit on the surface. It grows. It's awesome. So anybody that's creative, if you've let your creativity subside, highly encourage you. Block an hour, block 10 minutes. I don't care. Block a few minutes. Just go be creative for a few minutes without worrying about the results and just live in the creativity, and it will change your mindset for sure.
Yeah. See, for me, I mean, you're 100% correct. For me, I would need to add a little more structure to that, just because, executive function has always been a challenge for me, believe it or not. But yeah, but just so instead of just sitting down for an hour, I'll be like, okay, sit down for an hour. And also, this is the song I want to learn. I'm going to pick this song, or this is the scale I want to learn. And I'm just going to noodle on this specifically, and just, little goals here and there, and just keep clearing the bar.
Yeah. For me, like, enjoy learning other songs or the structure
No?
side of it. That's not, I mean, I only know a few other songs
Huh.
that I haven't been a part of.
Interesting.
I just grab the guitar and start just seeing what comes out.
Right.
Sometimes it's literally 3 minutes and there's nothing there and I put it down, but I still like let something out. And then other times it's like I just write an entire song
Mm.
musically and it just riffed up to verse to chorus to bridge, and at least the framework's there. I'm going to tweak it down the road, but sometimes it's just like I never think about what I'm going to play. I
Did
just
you ever
kind of
get bored
move
though?
around.
Like to me, I always get bored because if I don't have that structure or somebody prompting me with their own ideas, and this is why I like to collaborate so much, I think.
Yeah.
With music, at least wise, or at least with that is yeah, I just when I learn somebody else's song, usually I'm learning a different chord progression or a different chord voicing altogether, and so then I can kind of take that and then I can see how I can apply that into writing another song. So yeah, I don't know, like that's something I've always liked to challenge myself with.
Yeah, I mean, I've created chords just because I'm just
Right,
like, oh, let's just see what this is. I mean, I don't create them; they exist, but like
right, right,
chord I've never known before, or I can't find that one chord I needed to go to. I've got the progression going on, but I'm just not getting the feeling out of this one chord, and then I'll just break that one chord down to be like, all right, what notes do I want in that, and then I'll figure out what chord that is and play it.
right. And then 20 minutes later, your capo's on the 13th fret, and you're like, "What's going on? Why does this sound
Exactly,
like that?"
exactly. I do believe in music. There's a magic of catching inspiration before it becomes. And actually, a good friend of mine who I'm writing music with, really well, Brendan, talks about how at some point he's covering his own songs, right?
Hmm.
So like there's a point, and this is where the magic is of figuring it out, having it down, and now covering your own, what you already wrote.
Right.
And if you can catch that one take where it's got the excitement and the life and the energy behind it because you're still excited about it before it passes into I'm just playing what I already figured out.
Hmm.
There's magic there, and that's frankly where I try to find myself when I'm writing is like, okay, I got that part down. Now I'm going to table it. I'm going to move on to the next part, and I'll come back to it. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's so funny. Again, different minds, different
Yeah.
ways things work,
I know. Like
and different
there's
habits we
so many
build.
different ways.
Yeah,
There's so many different ways to get to one goal in the end, and
yeah,
it's hard to really fault any of them.
yeah,
Like as long as they're working out for you and it's it's going smoothly.
yeah. One, it's also the different habits and techniques we build, good and bad, to manage our own brains and our own process. Like I
Hmm.
need to stay engaged and excited into something, otherwise I will lose interest in it. I know that about myself.
Mm.
That's just something I have to do is to keep enough of an edge and excitement around it. Otherwise, I've lost it.
At the same time, too, I think it's a lot easier to continue something you're doing than to start something. So
Agreed.
I I think at this point, just with my podcast, even though there are a million steps to go, I've already done a million steps at the same time.
Right.
So yeah, like I mean, I'm thinking right now, like I've still got a couple episodes that I need to produce to its fullest, and that can seem like a mountain in front of me, but just at the same time, knowing what I've already done, like at that point, it just kind of becomes like, like it's almost like an inertia thing,
Yeah.
where like the second I pick it back up again and start, you know, being really meticulous with my planning and stuff, as soon as that's, as just the dominoes will fall.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, that's awesome, Dan. I thank you again so much for not only being on the podcast, but again, being a friend for whatever we said, 16
Yeah,
years,
man.
whatever, 15 years, whatever it is. So thank you. Proud of you.
Thank you.
Don't forget, No
Proud of
Holmes
you too.
Barred. Well, thank you, man. I appreciate that. No Holmes Barred, Dan's podcast. I'll link it in the show notes. Make sure you subscribe to it so you catch up new episodes as they come out. This has been Bird Seats. Thanks, Dan.